So, tons of questions, probably too many. Oh God.
That's good. Because you're smart. I saw your videos. You're smart. You know a lot of stuff. So I said, how'd
Oh,
you ask me good questions?
thank you for saying that. Like I'm telling you, since the last couple of years, my brain has. I feel like I'm going through some kind of like mush. Like I really don't feel like the same person anymore. But I used to be much, much, much more than I am right now. My first question, let's just start from the beginning, is religious background. Like, what was your religious background with your family at the time?
Well, we were Presbyterian. So we were, I guess, normal Christian people. My parents were Presbyterian. And we went to the church. I remember I was 14, so I wasn't deeply into, you know, the deep belief thing. I knew that there was a God. I knew that there was information that they wouldn't tell us, or that we weren't allowed to ask. Um, and church for me, it was cool because we were able to go with our high school and junior high school guy and girlfriends. So our
Mhm.
friends were there, so it was a good place to go. And then they had their teachings on the side. And for me, I'm the kind, just like Moses in the Ten Commandments, I'll fully believe it when I see it. And I want to, just like Moses, I want to hear the word of God from God Himself. And sometimes, a lot of times, when you ask for something, you will get it, especially if you really mean it and really want it. And I listened to the ministers and stuff, but I had had my own out of bodies and stuff too, and I didn't really see them talking, but I saw them alluding to it. You know, like Paul went up to the third heaven and stuff like that. But there were things, and then as I got older, I saw that there was a lot they didn't know, the scientists too, and a lot that they were holding back. The scientists too, holding back, just like the
Mhm.
controller. And maybe we'll talk about that later. This paranormal, supreme paranormal entity that roams all the paranormal corridors at will, doing what he will and adjusting what he wants. The scientists called this, they called it the controller. I call it the controlling agent in charge, and regular people would call it God. They withheld this information from regular people. They've known about it since the late 90s, but they withheld it from the regular people, and the universities wouldn't allow them to mention it because it represented a God force or the opposite of a God force. But I was allowed to look into it and did, and confirmation was established. We can go over that too. Yeah, but the controller was interesting,
You
and
are like my brain right now is like, because like I have a sci-fi series and I want to keep bringing it up, but like I clearly need to get back to editing it and make it happen because I have a character called the Butler, and he
okay.
kind of manages the souls on Earth that are like dolls in this experience, whatever. But that when you're saying the controller, I'm like, oh my God, like maybe I was like channeling that information. So do you think the controller is the same being that you saw when you were on that platform? Like, is that the same energy, or is it a lower aspect of God that is the controller?
I think that the controller that they're talking about is the same thing that I saw, the same being that I saw. I think the
Hmm.
controller is God. I call him the controlling agent in charge because he controls everything, and in a good way, in a benevolent way.
Not psychotic, not psychotic, right?
No, no,
Okay.
it's the kind of control. I asked people, it's the kind of control that people would give their lives to. I
Oh,
said,
okay.
if you, would you let God control you fully if He agreed to take, take charge of
Take care.
you? Most
Yeah.
people said yes. Yes, they
Yeah.
would relinquish control to God, and
Yeah.
that's the person wants to do His will, and He sees everything. He knows inside what we're thinking too. So it's pretty
Hmm.
cool. If you're good with him, he's super good with you. And if you help him, he helps you 77 times more. And the businessmen know that. There's certain laws that work in this universe, like laws of asking for things and getting things. And it's an interesting, it's good, it's a good, he made us so perfectly. With those higher divine gifts, uh, if the person decides to misuse them, he either won't be able to, or the abilities will be taken away from them, or they'll be destroyed while he's trying to misuse them. So the ones who are using them for the proper ways get a lot of abilities because God knows they'll use them in the right way. Where the ones who want to use it for the improper ways, God will stunt them in advance, and they'll won't really have any abilities in those
You're,
things.
you're
Only the good
100%.
people.
Yeah,
Only the good
100%
people.
right on that. I've seen that. And like when I first started looking into NDEs, I was like, why are some people, and not to say if you're listening to this and you had an NDE, I'm not saying that this is always the case. But generally speaking, when someone seemed a little dark, like in regards to when they went into the NDE, they were living a dark life. They
Yeah.
very rarely, if ever, have anything more than intuition. They don't get those special psychic powers and stuff. And I noticed that the people who were like there, like almost like here to help, and they wanted to be helped, they wanted to be a tool to help others. They had every kind of psychic ability you can think of. Not to say that all
Yeah.
psychics are positive, because I mean, people don't understand that that's where Wicca and well, I don't say Wicca, but just say dark magic, dark witchcraft, all of that is an attempt to get the same powers, but in a dark way,
Yes.
right?
Just like the old guys back in Mexico who used like the uh, what do they call them, the sorcerers.
Hmm.
That's about power and control. Where and that's the difference between the psychic and the mystic. Where the psychic will get tripped up because they're only still partially developed, and that's where people have to lean into mysticism because it's directly uh, oriented only towards God, and then you have His help pulling you along too.
Hmm.
The psychic is still a baby. It's like a baby compared to the mystic, or
Yeah.
even compared to the priest or nun. But everyone's psychic, but we want to develop far beyond that, and we can easily. All you have to do really is the breathing exercises, and that will lead you into all the other things. But the psychic, yeah, has uncontrolled abilities that they neither understand nor fully control.
Yeah.
Or yes, and so the person wants to move on to mysticism because it's the perfect self-development where you're grooming your own self to be of service to God. And that's a high thing. And when you even think about God or try to develop yourself to be with Him, He gives you anything you want. But then when you get to that level, there's little things in this world that you want because you have
Yeah.
all those invisible things. There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I have so many questions. Like you're one of those people, I have like five questions at once and I got to figure out which one to say. But I do want to mention this because like what you did mention something that has been in the back of my mind, and I just want to make sure that people hear this.
Uh-huh.
Um, because we as humans, we can do good and bad. We have the duality. And I've seen mothers and fathers who were really good and the child feels safe with them. And then I've seen some psychotic, scary individuals who have children and they use them for all the wrong reasons, right? So I've seen both. I just feel like people need to understand like the reason why we always hear about this loving feeling and God is love. And like you hear it so much when you watch enough of these NDEs. If this being that has all control, this controller has all control, is even slightly scary, is even slightly vindictive, is even slightly, like any of those things. God help us. Literally, God help us. You know what I mean? You don't want to be in that situation. So it is best that it decides to be good and benevolent and loving and caring and nurturing. Right? You
Yeah, I mean,
know?
that's with God, that's the only way He really can be. You know, uh, to someone like Hitler, he may think God is mean, but if you're in the right way, God is a perfect protector. I mean, if there's a God who can do anything and He'll do it for you for free, what clown wouldn't want to try that out? He could make your mom live to 90s. My mom lived to 102, and I prayed to God when I was young that my parents would live a long time. My dad lived to 91.
Wow.
So if you, and he says, lean on me, and it's, it's not hard to explain, but it's something everyone has to get into. And a lot of people are in droves are flocking to God because things are getting super crazy. But He's the one, when the person dies, they're super glad. They know there's a God, and they're super glad there is a life after death. They see that God has kept His promise of life after death. He cannot lie.
Yeah.
And if you want to be with Him, He's already with you. And he gives us our own free will. And he's so good that he will not go against us, even if we say, I'm going to jump off the bridge. He allows you to have your own will. But if you want him, he'll fully accept you right away,
Mm.
right as the truck's coming to hit you.
Mm.
It's
And let me mention one other thing before we get out of that, because it kind of is connected to that whole thought. And I actually, there's no coincidences. I started reading about Edgar Casey. Not started. I've known about Edgar Casey for a while. I started reading one of his a book about him last night. And in that book, he mentioned something that I started to gather, like I did not know this, through watching and reading a lots of NDEs. I said it in previous videos where I feel like the Pinocchio story is kind of what God, our situation with God, that God is trying to create a family or a companion. It doesn't have to be even full family, but a companionship through us. And the only way that we can be companions to God is if we up the ante, if we go through all these trials and tribulations and expand and build up and get tested too, to show that we, if we have the power to
to
destroy
get
worlds, that
tested.
we won't destroy worlds, that
Yes,
we won't use our powers for negative, right? So I started to gradually see that. And then that was written very clearly. Like that is what Edgar Casey says is the role of humans in regards in comparison to God, that God is trying to build up companionship because it doesn't have any partners. It doesn't have a mother or father. It doesn't have anything greater than it. So it has to kind of create from itself and try to build itself those pieces up, in this
yes.
weird way. So I just wanted to know if this is something that you've experienced, if that makes sense to you.
If what? If
That
something
idea,
that
that idea that God is that the purpose of us as souls is that God wants companionship.
he does well. He does want companionship, and we are from him, so we are like his children. Um, However, and our primary purpose on this earth plane is to find ourselves, then find our God within ourselves and by ourselves. Uh, it's like that's why that it's like a solitary journey with the person and God, and that is our purpose to find ourselves, find our God within ourselves and by ourselves. It's a good path to take. It's a good path to take.
Okay. And now going back to kind of like going into order here. So was there any psychic history in your family? Like did anyone else in your family, usually it's using a family line of psychics. Was there anyone else in your family that had these
Yeah,
gifts?
yeah. I was adopted, Hachi. Um, I have been told, of course, I'm black, but I have been told. Like I was working one day, and this Indian chief. It was at the Temple Hospital with the, and an Indian chief in the full headdress came into the building. It was an ear, nose, and throat building. I was there, and he said, "You're a Blackfoot Indian." I said, "What?" He said, "You're from the Blackfoot Indian tribe." And he had the full, like all the feathers and stuff. I said, "Okay," and I did, I never thought of that. I had some different feelings since I was about that. I might have, and all blacks have other bloods, but
Yeah.
I and I thought about that as the years went by, and I guess I probably do. It's mainly black, of course, but all blacks have different bloodlines, and a lot of
Oh
us have
yeah.
Indian bloodline. They're finding that out every day. That the blacks were here with the Indians before the slavery started. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of, but I never knew. My son is the only one. He's super psychic. Yes, he's
Okay.
heavily.
Okay. So
Yes,
okay. Awesome. Okay. So I mean,
yeah.
I
He's.
think we can assume that since it's going like as you progress, you created psychics that you probably came from psychics. You just don't
I
not
must
aware of
have.
it.
Yes, yes.
Awesome, awesome. All right. Now where were you going during all these OBEs? Because that's a lot of
Um,
OBEs.
yes. Most of them in this earth plane, down city streets, uh, up near the rooftops, near electrical wires. One time I got half stuck in the rooftop where my feet were dangling in the room. My body was out on top of the rooftop, and you have to unthink yourself out. In that world, if you picture yourself stuck up into the neck in quicksand, You'll suddenly be stuck up the neck in quicksand. It's not until you picture yourself somewhere else where you pop out. Um, so that's an interesting thing. But usually in the dream dimensions, you can go almost anywhere you want. It's almost like an experimental level of consciousness where you can experiment with your flying, with your staying in the dream, with your recognizing that you're in a dream or not in a dream, with the slowly going into out of bodies. Like in a dream, if you jump up in the air and come down slowly, you're in a lucid dream. And once you realize I'm dreaming, the scene will change and you'll wake up in real life invisibly or in that dream world, but being able to do anything you want. Just in that Leo DiCaprio movie where they were adjusting the buildings and stuff. I never saw that, but it looked interesting. In the dream world, you can control it. In the out of body world, you're in the earth plane, but invisible. There was a thing where where criminals, because they didn't have nothing else to do, like life, who were going to spend the rest of their days in jail, would go to the library, read about out of bodies, learn how to have them after 9 months or whatever, float out of their bodies, go to the safe, get the combination, and then either pass it on or when they got out, go rob the safe. But you can go anywhere you want during an out of body. And there's a few ways that you can have an out of body just by how you go to sleep or by programming. And it's not hard to do once you learn the steps. There's a good book that everyone should get. And I met this guy. He's the only one who had as much knowledge and experience as I did. I haven't seen anyone like this guy. And his name was Sylvan Muldoon. He's pretty famous. He was a Dutch-American out-of-body guy from the 1920s. He also, like me, got in contact with a scientist, and they began to do some research together. But if you look up his books, I think he wrote one or two, called Adventures in the Out of Body by Sylvan Muldoon. Read that. And or get my book, Chapter 3 explains out of bodies fully. But his was really good too. And it's written in that old school style that I like. But in the out of bodies, you're generally in the earth plane, but invisible. And say a girl could have an out of body to see what her boyfriend's doing. She will she will remember it as a dream. The guy may see her in a dream, and although she might be standing or sitting in his bedroom watching him, he could be awake or asleep. He might remember her in a dream. She will remember the experience as a dream because the dream, the level of consciousness in a lucid out of body is different. When you remember it again, it'll seem like a dream, except much more clearer. And you might only remember that one part. It won't be extended like a dream. You can have an extended out of body, but if a female were to do that, and you could say that a physical out of body where the girl wants to see what her boyfriend is doing, so she out of body and flies through his bedroom wall and watches him, or watches him through the window, or literally from her bed. That's like a physical form of remote viewing, which is another interesting thing too.
Okay, wait, I have a bunch of questions here. Okay.
Okay,
Just,
sorry about that.
just in this moment here. Okay. So the lucid OBE, out of body, is different than an OBE. So coming out of the lucid dream, because I've heard this, you're completely accurate in this. I've heard that you can go from a lucid dream and then switch to an out of body. But you're saying that that is more dreamlike than just having an out of body, a straight out of body? Or is it the same?
Well, is a lucid dream more dreamlike than an out of body?
No, I'm saying if you come out of if you come out of body through a lucid dream, is it different
Yeah.
than having a straight OBE?
The method is different, but the results are the same.
Okay, so would it still be so for an OBE, it's also dreamlike, uh, or no?
The OBE is dream like, especially in memory recall. and experience, but it's more clearer. You'll remember
Okay.
it like where a dream will fade away, the out of body you'll remember. That's where the girl
Okay.
can tell if she really went to his room. She'll remember the same thing the next day. If it's a dream, she'll forget about it by the time she's eaten breakfast.
Ah,
The
okay.
out of body memory will linger.
You give a lot of good examples and definitions and things that I've never even thought about. So you made it very clear about how it seems from an OBE standpoint, as opposed to if
Thanks.
you have a spiritual, like you said, a spiritual out of body, aka an NDE, or an NDE, that it is much more clear,
Yeah. It
right?
does get technical. And that experience, year after year, month after month, week after week, six a day, six a night, out of uh, you just I know it by heart. But it's a fun thing to do. Everyone should, with the breathings, begin breathing and wanting to dream, writing down your dreams. You'll graduate to the out of bodies, and they're deep too. And there's always a connector. That paralyzation is the connector that will lead you from dream to out of body, and then the connector from out of bodies to uh, uh, the 24/7, the occurrence prone, is the breathing too. It's interesting, but yeah, the lucid that uh, kind of like transfer of consciousness from dream consciousness, and Muldoon talks about this too, to out of body consciousness is you can see it in the lucid dream. Here's a good example. Uh, I was flying one day, uh, and I was falling one day, both flying and falling. I was flying one day, realized that I was flying because I could feel the wind. I could, everything was super clear. I could go where I wanted, realized I was flying, woke up. And you can either wake up in a super realistic lucid dream world where you can do anything you want, or you wake up, the scene just changes and you wake up in out of body form, but invisibly in the real world. And
Mm.
you'll be super awake and you will remember it. So a person can go to an out of body by planning a lucid dream. Here's how I did one, a quick one. I would, as I go to sleep and doing my breathings, I would picture myself with each breathing going up a ladder. Um, the higher I got, the deeper into sleep I went. And the higher I went in spiritual reality, like in the mind, the lower my level of consciousness went. And the lower your physical level of consciousness gets, the higher your spiritual consciousness goes. Like when your human consciousness goes down, your spiritual consciousness wakes up. And that breathing can make that transfer of consciousness continuous, whereas there will be no lapse of consciousness. You'll be able to switch from dream to out of body and remember doing it and while you're doing it. There's a lot to it, and it's nicely detailed, but with the right question like that you're asking, the more information can be pulled out.
Yeah.
A lot of
And
times, a lot of people don't ask me the right or good enough questions.
when you're saying the lowering the consciousness, so it's like really kind of like with meditation when they say we're trying to quiet the monkey brain or trying to quiet the logical or the left brain, right? So we're quieting that
Yes.
so that the soul mind, and the soul mind is totally different. If you watch enough of these NDEs or OBEs or people having spiritual experiences, you realize they leave the body and they're still thinking. They still have consciousness, and that is something totally different from the mind. So I call it the soul mind. I don't know if you have a name for it, but it's totally different from the human brain.
It is. Well, the conscious mind that we're using now is, or we could call it our awake mind or our conscious. And then the subconscious mind, that's the conscious mind of our out of body or dream worlds. So when we go into a dream, we're slowly sliding into our subconscious self.
Mm.
And that's where things start to slow down and the vision and stuff is different because you're starting to go into spirit form, and usually it takes place during sleep. Um, the physical mind of our spirit body is our subconscious mind, and our conscious mind is our conscious mind, and our subconscious is the regular mind of our spirit body. So when spirit body and physical body, when both of those minds, we have three minds, but when both the subconscious, when your inner mind and your outer mind begin to communicate with each other non-verbally, because the subconscious talks non-verbally, not with words, with pictures and symbols and thoughts.
Mm.
Then you can begin to have anything you want in this world. The conscious mind is the boss. The subconscious is our spirit, and it's like our invisible genie that we can call upon at any time, and it will move heaven and earth while we sleep to get what we say we want. And then you have God to help you too. You can't lose. You can't lose.
Yeah, and it sounds a lot like what people are communicating with when they do the QHHT, the Dolores Cannon, version of hypnotherapy. That's the all mind that they're talking to. Like they're talking to that consciousness that can see beyond time and space, and can heal people immediately. Like can do anything. It's like magical.
Yes,
Um,
yes. It's that universal, it's that third mind that's directly connected with God. Like when
yeah.
when a little kid prays, they go above the subconscious and to directly with God. That's actually ideal, is to bypass, but the subconscious is so strong, so magical, uh, that it's better to use the spirit mind to contact God. You can do it with a conscious mind, but because you want to begin to communicate and exercise the mind of your invisible spirit body, the higher
Mm,
you that is always with you and that hears you. When it goes to sleep, it makes sure your heart still beats, and
yeah.
it regulates everything.
Yeah.
Um, and when we recharge during sleep, the spirit body comes out and absorbs the prana or electromagnetic energy that's in the air. It's not the knocking out that recharges us. It's our spirit body recharging. And Muldoon explains that fully in the electromagnetic energy that's in the air. That's what revitalizes. Because we're electromagnetic by nature, partly water, partly electrical. And our brain is all electrical. So when the person does a breathing, they're getting that electromagnetic energy. The Indians call it prana, the
Mm,
Asians call it chi, and it's called the
mm,
force. But when you get a hold through the breathing and the concentration of that energy, you can do a lot of things, and things
yes.
that are in a high level.
And
Mm-hmm.
I've heard is God. Like, I mean, we sing chi, we sing prana, but you're literally breathing in God. Like, if you think about the Bible, when they say that, he breathes in into the body and a part of himself.
The
So
breath of life, yes,
yeah.
yes.
I definitely want to mention this because it came out from something you said, the importance of, like you're saying, this is all a process of learning. Like this is stuff that people should really be doing and learning and trying to get better at, but being able to focus. And I'm saying this not, I mean, as somebody who needs to focus, like I'm saying I need to do it as well, but focusing because you are not the first person to say that when you are out of body, what you think happens. Where you want to be, you are at. What you want to see, you're in. We have the power of God as God's children to create. And while people use the law of attraction and things like that, and it takes a while to create in this realm, as soon as we leave this body, it is instantaneous. So that could be a reason why a lot of people have all these scary, if you're like in a dark place and your thoughts are always negative and dark, you could be creating all of these horror shows and hells and all types of realms when you leave your body thinking about crazy stuff.
And because you know a lot, where would you say would that scenario most likely happen? Where your thinking creates negative psycho, physio spiritual effects. Where would you say that most likely happens with a person?
um, where would it most? I'm not
It's
gonna.
not an easy question, I know, but
Yeah.
when you hear it, you'll say, "Oh, of course." Where would you think?
um. Well, I mean, I just from when I just stories that I've heard, I hear like when people are either on drugs or doing stuff like that, or if they're like dying in the process of dying, like a really, traumatic death, then they're thinking that. Other than that, I don't know.
Yes. Yeah,
Oh,
that primal fear of dying. Yeah. Uh, that can be super freaky whenever we go to sleep and we're half awake and half asleep and we have that paralysis. Have you ever had that? Sleep paralysis?
I know people who have. I don't recall ever having it.
That, and just like what you say, where when you're in that uh, invisible world esoteric state, that spiritual level, then your thoughts or your fears can create reality. And no
Mm,
more so dramatic as when the person's half awake, half asleep, uh, because they're in between that awake and sleep state, and something can be imagined or feared for on the side, and it'll literally be there, but not in reality. It'll be there, but invisibly. You'll see it
Mm,
spiritually, but you won't see it physically. And
mm,
some of it is a fear produced thing that is an actual illusion. And sometimes it can be a literal thing that's there, and the person happens to see it spiritually, and then either wakes up or pops out of it. That can be a frightening thing, that paralyzation. But if you do the breathings, what you want to do is ignore the fearful things. They might even jump at you or come super close. That's if you can ignore that, you will be able to come out of your body and literally see it. That's where that super Spock-like concentrated, no emotional focus, where you're focused
mm.
on everything. You're super aware, but you're in full control of your emotions. It's all right to have the emotion, but you want to control them while you're having them.
Now, this opens up a couple of other questions. So there are people who think that leaving the body is just something you don't do. Like you literally are going to open up a space or a portal so that some dark energy can take over your body and possess it, and you'll be stuck somewhere, right? So I want you to speak to that, like whether or not you think that's a possibility that you could lose your actual body from being out of it too long. And then you're saying literal, like I've had NDEs, ears, and OB ears say that they've seen dark shadow people sitting there just watching them. Once they come out of their
Yes.
body, they're not thinking this at all. They just say, there's just something there staring at me. So there
Yes.
are negative entities out there as well. So I want you to maybe speak to that. And, is it possible? Do we have the power to just say, go away, and they go away? Because I've heard that we do. And I think it's true.
Now, the people who you say had that, what kind of experiences were they? Were they sleeping? Were they what?
NDE. One was an NDE.
Okay.
One, I'm trying to think. Oh no, she was telling the story after her NDE, so it wasn't part of her NDE. She just had a out of body, and she said she saw a shadow person just watching her in her sleep.
Definitely in the out of body or the dreams, yeah. There
Mhm.
are, see, just like that moment between waking and sleep, where the person's going to sleep, but they're not fully asleep yet.
Mhm.
Similar to that is the length of time between death and reconsciousness after death. That brief 15 to 22-second time period where the person's half in, half out of their body. Um, uh, the person can then spiritually see things that may or may not be there, or it may be a mixture of both. One may be an illusion, the other one might be real. Uh, but let's see, where's it going? They may or may not be there. Yeah. See, your spiritual, once you get into your level of consciousness go low enough, once you start to fall asleep deep enough, then your spiritual vision starts to take over. And in that paralyzed state, in between waking up and going to sleep, you're half in and half out. And you can see some part, it's where you can see both physical and the spiritual. So a
Mhm.
lot of times, there can be something there, or the person may have fear imagined it, or it can be both. Uh, there's a period between, and in the holy books they call it soul interception, that period of weakness in between waking and sleeping, or in between life and death, at 15 to 22 seconds, where uh, supposedly, but if the person has God as a shield, they won't even come close. That there's a moment of, there's a brief interval where if a fractured person who has no belief in God and hates not a dirty, but a person who's on the opposite side of spiritual, a nasty person, a wicked person, a fractured person, mentally ill, there can be a brief interlude. Suppose that this is only a theory, that
Mhm.
the spirit demon can swoop in, not completely possess the thing, but swoop in and inhabit it for a few seconds until that spirit body transformation is complete. That's where the
Mhm.
belief in a power outside yourself helps, because when you believe in God, they can see it from miles away. It's like a beacon of light, like a lighthouse, and they go the opposite way if you just
Mm,
believe. Because all you have to do is think about calling God, and they are gone. They won't even come near
yes,
you if you believe. They're afraid of that. And if,
yes,
especially if you believe in God, but especially if you believe, they won't come near you. And
yes,
if that it's that belief. That's why some people might have a cross on, or a Bible, or the whatever instrument of their faith, a candle. When
yeah,
you get high, you don't need those things. It's just pure faith. But nothing can hurt you, especially if you're working with God, or you come in His name, or with Him, or you're going to call His name, and if you love Him, and nothing is
mm,
allowed to get. You have a deep protection in this world and in the spiritual world. So
yes.
the person can go to sleep and not be afraid, and they say a prayer as they're going to sleep. You'll have the full protection. Plus, your own self and your subconscious is there. If
Yeah,
anything too frightening happens in the other realms or dimension, whether it be sleep or uh, the out of body, you will pop awake and pop back to, just like in a nightmare. You'll, when it gets too much, your subconscious will bring you out of there and wake you back up. You'll
yeah.
never have anything that you won't be able to handle.
Now, I'm going a little deep here because it's in my mind. I got to get this out. So, because remember, I've read and researched a lot of NDEs. So, what you're saying confirmed is confirmed by the NDEs where people have this hellish experience and all of a sudden they pray to God. I don't know why some people wait so long. Like, I mean, if I start seeing some crazy stuff, immediately I'm like, hey, God help me. I'm not even thinking
Yes.
about it. But some
Well,
really get to some extreme situations before they go, oh yeah, wait a minute, maybe I should, you know. But
yes.
then they get out of that situation. But there have
Yes.
been some, like I'm just thinking of some right in the top of my head where I mean, I don't say really bad people because I mean, like I don't want to judge, but they, drug dealers and like, just you hurt a lot of people is where I want to say, like people who have hurt a lot of people purposely and carelessly, where they are in a hellish experience and they don't seem to be able to get out. Like they are in there for some time. It almost feels like an eternity to them before they finally, obviously, they're telling the story. They do get out eventually, but it's not an immediate like, oh God help me. It's like, no, you got to go through this. So that's interesting to me, and it makes me wonder sometimes. Well, I guess the question I have for you first off, in your experiences, has you seen anything to make you believe in either a hell, because you've spoken about heaven and that's clear, but a hell or several hells or lower astral type experiences?
Definitely the lower astral. I've been in those before, where it can feel like you're walking in tar or quicksand, like you can't run. I've been in, or you might see beings moaning and moving around you, vague figures. It's dark. It's not bright. The light isn't bright, and there's a foreboding type of feeling. Um, as far as a permanent hell, I didn't see any indication in research or in experience of a burning hell, uh, except for when if the person decides not to go into heaven or not be with God, or is not allowed in. There is just like that dark void, there is a soundless unconsciousness where the person feels as though they're in a velvety body shaped coffin. They're awake, but they're in, like, it would be like an endless coma, and where they're in there with their thoughts, or only partially awake. But that's the furthest I think it would
Mm.
go. There's no devil down inside the ground that's going to burn us after we're dead. No.
I've heard, like I'm not Christian, but I've heard of the outer darkness. Like they mention that a lot. So that kind of sounds, what you're saying would sound similar to what they would call probably the outer
Yeah,
darkness.
there is a dark side, and there are dark entities out there. Um, but and my direction was the opposite of any hell. But I haven't seen any evidence where, like, a prison-like thing. And if you act good, nothing really bad is gonna happen to you. Not
Yeah.
permanently. Um, but there are dark entities out there. They can tell what side you're on, and they can they know in advance what you're going to think, say, or do. So the best protection is if they know that you're with God, they won't even come around you.
Good, good, good.
But there's darkness out there. Yes. Person must retain control of their feelings, thoughts, and emotions. Don't get swept away. And a breath of air will also help them calm down too.
A breath
Hmm.
of air
Yeah, just
outside the
like in
body.
you can do it in body form or in physical body, spirit body or physical body.
Okay.
In the near death, I experimented when I was underwater. I took a big breath of air to see if I could draw cosmic energy in out of body form, and I was able to. And in a dream or out of body, if you feel yourself being pulled back into the real world, going to sleep and being sucked back into your bed, if you take a deep breath or look at your hands, you can stay in that spirit world or
Mm,
the dream world longer. It's an interesting thing, all those spiritual and physio spiritual things.
yeah.
Like you can literally double your lifetime by having those experiences at night. And then when you're psychic 24/7, it can aid you in so many ways. If you know someone's in trouble, if you have to call someone, the synchronicity super increase everything. Just the perfect field to study and experiment with, as you
Yeah.
know.
One thing that I do want to make sure we touch on is the psychic abilities. We spoke about it a little bit before we started, how a lot of I remember watching The Matrix, and the Oracle is known for like smoking, like she smokes in the movie. And I'm like,
Okay.
why? I noticed that a lot of people that I know who were psychic, they smoke. Like I'm kind of against, smoke. I don't think it's good, it's not healthy. The way that they what they've done to the tobacco. Because back in the day, I've heard Native Americans say that tobacco was never an issue at all. It never was
Yeah.
in its natural form. That they
Yeah.
started to add all these different chemicals that make it so unhealthy. But if
Yeah.
if you could just explain to people, and you can talk for a while because I want you to explain why people who are psychic might be smoking more than the average person, why they might have the insomnia that you're dealing with right now, and anything else that you can talk about the psychic experience.
Okay. Yeah. Well, with the smoking, sometimes the psychic is so highly attuned to that invisible world that it's always on. And especially in the phase where the person becomes occurrence prone, where they've done the breathings and they've done the concentrated focus, and they become occurrence prone, then the psychic abilities are always happening. So the smoking grounds them because they can get super fuzzy in that dizzy spiritual world with all its thoughts and thinkings and uh, the memories of the dreams. And that can get really fuzzy and hazy where and just like same thing with a piece of silver or crystal can ground a person. Uh, but for an immediate grounding, the psychic will take a puff of a cig or a drink of a beer. And sometimes the person may want to turn off the psychic abilities, which it's too much, and you just need quiet. Um, sometimes a beer, a cig, sex, food, tobacco can help to ground the person because you can become too lightheaded, too spiritual. And
Mm,
it's not always good to get lost in heaven. Like you gotta have some grounding. You have to have some business along with the spiritual too. Because I once had a bag of crystals and silver. I was walking around downtown Philly in like a super mystic swoon, super spiritually high. But I knew exactly what to do and what not to do. Because but you can get super into a deep swoon. Gold is another thing. Like gold is a grounder and also a strength thing. Like football players should wear gold. If you have to
mhm,
do heavy athletic work, gold. If for dreams and inner work, you want silver, and you can blend them together for a good balance. Or if you're too muscular, your guy's too aggressive, put some silver on him. That'll cool him
mhm,
out. And if he's too weak or timid, put some gold on him and
mm.
get him lifting. or work out. But those things can be used for grounding too. But the because no one wants to be psychic all the time. You know, sometimes you do want to watch a movie or talk to your girlfriend without some side thing, you know, getting your attention. And
Yeah.
so the you get a break from it because when you're like this 24/7, it's like having a dual mind that's giving you information at the same time as when you're thinking consciously. You're listening to one side while you're operating with the other side. That can get tiring.
Yeah. Um,
So
I want to make sure I ask all the right questions before, just so I don't lose anything.
insomnia.
Oh yes, the insomnia. Yes, please explain that. And
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. The normal psychic or someone who's has a history of psychic abilities or who's is a psychic, usually will in some time during their life have some kind of sleep disorder, whether it be dreams, nightmares. Dreams they don't qualify, but nightmares qualify as sleep disorder, sleep paralysis, narcolepsy, insomnia. There's a few different sleep disorders, and I went to a clinic just to have mine checked out. Um, and I've had a few of those. Insomnia has been the stickiest one. I just had this in the last, I don't know, I guess after maybe the last 10 to 15 years. There was one point when I was working on the research in the book, Haji, where I stayed up for 18 hours from 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. every day for 2 or 3 years. That's when I
Oh
was
my
writing the book. Yeah, yeah,
God.
yeah. And so I had to relearn how to go to sleep and stuff. And
But I mean, do you have an explanation for that? Because I mean, you mentioned very clearly, just so people know, that our souls need to get revived the same way our bodies need to get revived, and they need to do
yes,
things. You got
yes,
spiritual work that you do. Sometimes we go back to God. Some people actually connect back with God and come back during their sleep cycle.
yes.
So how, I don't even say dangerous, but just like, oh my God, like how do you function like that, and why, and what can you
Well,
do about it?
it was a super important because I was translating the book, the research into book form.
Hmm.
And there were other scientists around the world who were trying to work with the near death. So it's semi like a race between 2000 and 2010. I knew I had the best stuff and I had to get it copyrighted fast before someone's. I had been hacked on my email 100 times in like 2012, 2011, 2013. But instead, they wouldn't tell me. Finally, they said it was one of the tech companies. 100 times trying to get the life after death info. So
Mm.
so I had to stay up for that. I was like fully driven to do that. I had good research that went beyond the world authorities, and I didn't want anyone stealing it or try to borrow it. One scientist did, but I
Mm.
knew that he would in advance, and I gave him reverse information, and that sent him off another trail while I went and finished the near death, solving the near death riddle. Um,
So
because
was it just left brain that you just couldn't shut off your brain? Is that what kind of what was happening? And that you also had this mission to complete this? Is that
yeah, I purposely stayed up using willpower to
ah
and then the left brain came with the creative thing of writing. And sometimes that's why I stayed up today, because sometimes, like I said, about lack of sleep or oversleep, like some of my clearest moments in writing and in thinking about this stuff has happened when I've been dead tired, like I am today, because I didn't sleep last night and I've been up. It's like what,
mm,
2:30 my time. So I slept 2 hours. But so it's strange. Like I'll average, and a lot of times with the psychic people will sleep a little too, because of the
mm,
fastings, because of the spiritual nature and the breathings. You don't need like Einstein slept 4 hours. I think John Lennon slept only
yeah,
four or 5 hours.
Da
So
Vinci,
I get
Da Vinci,
yes,
yeah,
and I saw I could get a lot more done by not sleeping. You know, I could get like a whole day and a half done if I just stay up
yeah.
like 10 more hours. And
And
it
let me
was
mention this because I realized that my thought process is wrong here, right? Because as you're saying it, it's coming to me. It's making more sense that time does not exist the same way it does here over there.
no,
So while granted going numerous days without sleep is going to cause some serious psychosis and just problems. You know, like you physically will get ill. If you sleep 2 to 4 hours a night, you might be doing all types of stuff in the astral during those 2 to 4 hours. You know what I mean? You could be living whole lifetimes, you know?
Yes.
So yes, okay, I get it now. I think I get it.
You know, early in the early days when I was like maybe between 12 and 14, to stop like the nighttime out of bodies and dreams from happening, I said I'll just stay up. And even though we had track or basketball or football practice the next day, I would stay up to like 4 or something. And to try and not have the dream, I would do breathings. Um, I was be so tired that I would definitely have a dream, and a lot of times an out of body. Um, so I got the opposite of what I wanted. There was something else I wanted to say about that too, but oh, when the person is dead tired, and you can like confirm it with the silver modune. I've had it many times. If you're dead tired or sick, your spirit body will go out higher and stay out longer and recharge faster on a short amount of sleep than a long amount of sleep. Like if
Mm,
you yeah, and the person wants to know their sleep cycles too, because sometimes you'll sleep deep and sometimes you'll sleep light. And if you go to sleep at the right time, you can go into a deep sleep and have a dream. Like a nap is the perfect time to try an out of body or a dream, because you're not dead tired, and but you're just enough tired where you need an hour's sleep. That's a perfect time to try an out of body. And
mm.
maybe well, I don't know if we could do it today, but maybe in another video we could explain how to have out of bodies and control them, or
Oh
how to
yes,
go
let's do that. Let's
from
definitely do
dreams
that
to
separately. Because I was thinking, I'm like, you should do this. So let's do that separately for sure. Okay. Um,
but yeah, so the sleep, it's interesting. That's an interesting thing. And um, so sometimes the lack of sleep, you're so tired that you recharge a lot, and you can get in 4 hours what might have taken 6.5. Just like a
mhm.
soldier, like so sometimes you hear the soldiers only get a few hours of sleep. Sometimes an actor or a singer, or an athlete, but you can recharge fast if you're dead tired. Just like let's see, not so much with eating, but if you're dead tired and you knock out fast, you'll recharge quick. So that's kind of how it is with me. And sometimes I'll go like a day with just eating one meal, and then sometimes I won't even eat that day. So that can make a person not sleep too. But I don't mind staying up. You can get a lot done if you don't sleep. You
Hmm.
know, studying and stuff all night. Like I'll be, doing three things at once while studying. You can get a lot done. And
Yeah.
sometimes I have to, like, I have some films coming out and possibly the second book that deals with the aliens. So I might have to get into that again. But it's nice to not have to do it. But sometimes you have to stay up, especially if you can get a lot of important things done. As long as you don't
Yeah.
do it too much.
Hey, let's talk about I really want to talk about the aliens, but we might be able to do that some other time.
Okay.
Um, I just wanted to mention that, well, maybe I don't need to mention that. Okay. Let me see. So I wanted to talk about the colors because colors were a big part of your NDE experience, right? And I noticed that that was another thing that very clearly it can parallel an alien experience. Like from what I've read in alien experiences, I've read a couple of them. They use a lot of the more advanced aliens use color therapy. They use certain colors to, just like you said. I mean, you literally said it verbatim. The red, I think, has been used. You said it was more of a bliss type thing, but I've heard red being used to cleanse a soul. I've heard blue being used to heal, definitely to heal a soul. And I've heard yellow to rejuvenate and also to heal as well. So those three colors I've seen yellow. It's actually weird because it's Superman colors, but red, yellow, and blue tend to be colors that aliens do use for some form of effect, bodily effect. And that it was just so interesting that you had that experience in your NDE. So my question to you really is, do you feel that there's any connection between your NDE and an alien experience? Like, is there any way that what you saw and experienced was something being done by aliens, or do you feel like there's a distinct difference between aliens and the God or spiritual levels?
Yeah, I mean, like at first look, like a normal person would say uh, that the alien abduction and the near death are two polar opposites. you know, like one is about life after death, and one brings primal ecstasy, the other brings primal fear, especially with the alien abduction. So it would seem like how could those two things be like in the same thing? But uh, there's a subset to everything, and the person, no matter what experience they have, they should take a deeper look into it, like suggesting that there may be more to it than what was at first surmised, like and seeing into things where you reflect on the experience and then reflect on every detail of the experience. And it's you have a lot of good, thoughtful near-death people out there giving their stories, but uh, there's a lot who it's kind of just a story, and there's not a lot of substantive. And I realize they're not working with the scientists, but uh, there's not. I you just I just would like to see more like deep introspection into their own experience, and there's a lot more happening than the person dying, floating around, and then coming back. Especially if the
Mm.
person looks into their own experience, you can learn so much about your own self because it's always an individual path, that thing. But no matter what they have, the person has to reflect on it for a while, understand it, keep it to themselves for a while.
I need to know, what was that brown? Was it a brown orb or a sentient being that you saw?
Yeah,
Is that what you said?
yes.
You have any idea what that was?
It's an actual thought form, not coming from me, not an internal, but an external thought form that was sentient and alive, and some kind of being that I had never seen, but I could tell because you know everything automatically all at once in that realm, especially once you focus your attention or desire to know what something is. When you say, I want to know what that is, you automatically know what it is or merge into it. Um, but that was a thought form that I interfaced with. I didn't try to interact with it. I just let it do its thing, and I did my thing with it. I watched it and let it go by, and to see
Awesome.
if it would interact. But I made no effort to interact. I was just let it occur. Just
Awesome. Awesome.
like when we see a UFO, we watch it and without realizing we're interfacing with it, but we let it occur. But yeah, with that UFO alien abduction thing, uh, there were certain things that I did notice that were interesting enough to not mention to the near-death scientist, but to ask the UFO guy what he thought. And he
Mm.
thought exactly what I thought. He said, "You're 100% right." I saw, and see, with them, the near-death guys, and they still didn't know too much about, they didn't know anything about UFOs, especially back then, 97, 98. No one knew anything outside of their own specialty.
And that's the
And the
problem.
near death only knew about near death. He didn't know about out of bodies, or the out of bodies didn't know about UFOs. The UFO guy didn't know about near deaths. So I was someone in that research field who knew about all those fields, and I could see uh, connections and tie-ins and ladders and
Mm.
doors to. And I kept it to myself for a long time. I kept the near death to myself for a long time. Because it's not necessary to tell everything or to give all information away. It's good to
Yeah.
keep some information to yourself. And here's that thing that I was remembering, uh, that quote, "Let cautious silence be a sacred sanctuary of spiritual wisdom." That's a good one. You want to keep some things in reserve, especially with this kind of topic, because everyone wants to know about it. And a lot of
Yeah.
times with people, it's interesting. But in that things, you want to keep some things to reserve, and you want to reflect on everything. You want to remember it, and it's a memory. That's another thing we'll talk about too. But
That is a
yeah,
great quote to end on because I myself have stories that I keep to myself, and I'm like, why do I keep it? I'm like, no, this has to stay with me for a little bit, you know. But
yes.
I thank you so much because I know that you are very, very tired, and you still went out of your way to help me with this. If you could just tell people the name of your book, I'll have I'll have it go across the screen, and how to
Okay.
contact you, and anything else like you're doing right now that you want them to know about.
Yeah, it's called America's Mystic Solves Near-Death Riddle, and it tells the story of my near-death and the research that I did with the three world authorities. There were four, but only three main ones. Um, and yeah, go to my website and get it because Amazon takes 90%, and then the publisher's 5. So at
And
least
your
the person with,
website?
yeah, definitely go to my website and get it because then I get it. You get it directly from me. I keep in contact with the people who buy it, and um, and then they learn
I'm
more.
saying, what is your website so I can have the
Oh,
go.
it's you can go Eugene Braxton at wix.com.
Okay, I'll have that come
Or
up.
if you put my name in, or America's Most Experienced Mystic. If you
Okay,
Google that or Google my name, the Wix WX will come up and you can get it right on the website. It's a cool website too.
awesome,
Have you been
awesome.
to it?
Yes, yeah, that's how I got in contact
Okay.
with you. Okay,
Okay.
all right, and
I
then
got it.
your take home message for everybody, something positive, something good.
Yes. Two things actually.
Hmm.
Um, here's a quote, and I got two quotes. Okay. The near death experience is simple and can be observed, analyzed, understood, and seen for what it is, when taken as a whole rather than a series of random events. There is a certain order to everything, and the near death experience is no exception. Near death has an order, has several sequential stages, a clear and orderly structure, repeating patterns, a beginning, middle, and end, which makes sense, and are easily seen when taking as a whole instead of a single series of random events. Um, that's a quote from my book. And the second one, like the goodbye quote, is that upon attainment of the highest spiritual heights, we find that love and the desire to love assures us at last of happiness under the sun. And that is super true.
Beautiful,
Hmm.
beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. It always comes right back to love.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Perfect. Thank you again for your time. And I mean, this is a true sacrifice because you were tired. And I just pray, I'm actually going to be praying all night, like, please let Eugene be sleeping, have a
Oh, I
restful,
will.
beautiful sleep.
I will.
Yes. But thank you again. And we're going to definitely have to do this again. I think we can have a whole new, we can do it, a whole new segment can be created just from you with the psychic abilities and information about that.
There's a lot of good info. Yes, Haji. Hmm.
All right. All right. Well, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep. I'm going to let you go.
I will. Thanks for having me. It was good. You know a lot of stuff. So, yeah, when we talk again, we'll produce some good info. Hmm.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Eugene.
All right. Thanks, Haji.
All right. Bye bye.
And take care.